surged ahead of Ted Cruz. He has the support of 28% of likely caucus goers, with Texas Senator Ted Cruz at 23% and Florida Senator Marco Rubio at 15%. On the Democratic side, the survey finds Hilary Clinton with 45% support to Bernie Sanders' 42%. So virtually a tie there. So who will take Iowa in that first real test of the 2016 election season? That's our topic this half hour. We want to hear from you on our Fox 26 Facebook page. You can also weigh in on Twitter. Use the hashtag Fox26forlife. Joining us live in the newsroom is our panel, led by our senior legal analyst, Chris Tritico, our news analyst, Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst, Jackie Bally. Good morning again, guys.
Good morning.
All right, so do we trust the polls? Do you think we're going to see a surprise upset come tomorrow?
These are the polls that mean the most as you get right on the edge and the verge of, on the eve, excuse me, of the election. That's the polls that really mean the most, and I think you should pay closer attention to these polls. Can there be an upset? Of course, there always can, because polling is not an exact science. But I think that I think that Donald Trump is going to pull the Iowa caucuses. I don't yet know about the Democratic side. Bernie Sanders has made a really big move in the last 2 months, and so Bernie Sanders actually could pull it out. But I don't think, I don't know who's up, I don't think, Jackie Bally, that Ted Cruz can close that gap.
Well, I think the Democrat side is actually the one that's more intriguing.
Exactly.
Because the third person, O'Malley, I believe, is, what's whatever.
Martin O'Malley.
Yeah,
Martin O'Malley, thank you.
He's in third place because nobody can remember his name. But anyway, the third place person has 3%. And in the Democratic caucus, they actually don't do it by ballots like we do on our side. So if they take their votes and they see that he's clearly not going to win, then those votes have to go somewhere else. And if they go to Bernie, then we could see him actually being the upset on that side.
And it's within the margin of error anyway.
On the Republican side, this is consistent with what we've been seeing. The Ted and the Donald Trump, they're in the first tier, with the Marco Rubio, even though he has gained a couple of points, but he's still in the second tier of the candidates. And so between Ted and Trump, that's been pretty consistent with everything we've been seeing so far.
Ted Cruz has pretty much acknowledged, I think, not publicly, but he's pretty much ready for the fact that he's not going to win the Iowa caucus.
Well, I don't think Ted is ever ready for not winning.
Well, I think what to look for on Monday night is what's the turnout. If the turnout goes to 150, 160,000, and usually it's about 120,000 Republican primary, what you're likely to see is Donald Trump really roll this thing. And if he does, he's able to take his big crowds that show up at his rallies, his high poll numbers, and convert it into election night victories. And if he's doing that, then the rest of the states become easier and easier for him, and he's just a machine rolling the Republican primary. Ted Cruz has got the best organization of establishment types that have been around the Iowa caucuses for a long time, and if Donald Trump is overtake that, it'll be great. And
Ted Cruz does not want to hear you say he's an establishment type.
Well, look, I think that Ted Cruz has built a very conventional Iowa caucus type apparatus. He's gone to county. He's got lots of people that have been working on this. Donald Trump is coming in bringing new people, and if he does, if the turnout goes up, he's able to convert his
not only new people, but a new way to campaign.
Well, it's definitely new people, because it's not typical Republican primary voters, which is what I've been saying from day one, which actually, if he becomes the nominee, would help the Republican Party. But the way he's describing it is almost close. What you see on Ted's camp, it's really grassroots, and he's been very, very organized and strategic with grassroots and getting core Republican caucus voters and core Republican grassroots to support his campaign.
And before we go to Sally, I want you to weigh in on the Democratic side. I mean, Bernie Sanders has come up 20 points in the last 2 months, 3 months, and he's now within the margin of error. He actually could pull this thing off.
Well, Bernie Sanders has got the same challenge as Trump does, that Hillary Clinton learned from the 2008 primary from Barack Obama. Is far more organized. The Democratic primary caucus are a little bit more complicated, and so he may have a big surge amongst youth voters in college campuses, but he has to get it across the board in Iowa, and it's going to be hard for him.
Let's just assume Bernie. Well, let me go to Sally, then we'll come back. Let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media.
Oh, we didn't want to stop your flow with the social media. All right, but a lot of people, of course, are talking about the GOP on the Twitter right now. Daniel says, my prediction for the Iowa caucus is a win for either Marco Rubio or Donald Trump, but Iowa voters always surprise us. And AG Conservative says, if Trump wins Iowa, the only way he becomes unstoppable is with this large field. The quicker the field shrinks, the more an alternative can form.
Well, I think there's some truth to that, that the longer that all of them stay in, they're splitting those votes up, which is, I can't remember the first guy that dropped out. exactly what he said. We need to drop out of this race so people can coalesce around somebody other than Donald Trump.
Well, I think people keep saying that, but if you look at Trump's numbers, Ted Cruz's numbers, and Carson's numbers, they're up in the 60-some-odd%. So I don't see where, even if you consolidate the establishment vote, where it comes from.
Right. If everybody drops out and leaves Ted, he still doesn't have enough if he gets everybody else.
Well, I think that, like I said, you have these two top-tier candidates, and I think as we continue to go down throughout the states, how the policies, how they articulate their policies, will really be the key. Trump came on strong because he is against the immigration policies of our current administration. That is something that resonates with a lot of voters, and that's why he continues to maintain in front.
But they're all against
on
the
Democratic
policy.
Well, according to voting polls, a lot of voters are also against the immigration policies, and that's why Trump is doing as well as he is with Republican primary voters and atypical Republican primary voters. And on the Democratic side, I really think it's going to be difficult for, as much as Bernie is surging, the infrastructure and the establishment in the Democratic Party will not let him get that nomination.
Well, I agree with that, but I want to get back to what I was asking right before we went to Sally. Bernie Sanders ekes out a win in Iowa. He's going to win New Hampshire. That's 2 wins in a row. Does that eke into the rest of the states as the primary moves forward?
Well, I think it positions him far better. It's going to be much harder to get through Iowa. I think he's got New Hampshire, but South Carolina and going forward, I think Hillary Clinton's going to start picking up steam. You know, the challenge for Bernie Sanders is the same challenge that Donald Trump has, which is bringing new people and creating the energy. And both have. The difference, though, is that Hillary Clinton is a far more effective candidate, and there has not been an effective candidate take on Donald Trump.
Well, I agree with that, but isn't also Bernie Sanders' problem with the fact that if you add up the things that he wants to do for the country, while it sounds great, there is absolutely no way to ever pay for this.
Well, there's no way to pay for the things that Donald Trump talks about, whether his tax cuts or building the wall and having Mexico pay for the wall.
Bernie Sanders is a 74-year-old socialist, and the fact that Hillary Clinton is having such a hard time and beating him is really saying what a poor candidate she is.
I don't agree with that, but we'll see where it goes.